Underground Bunker. This is your proprietor. On Thursday afternoon, November 3rd, I'm obviously not outside the courthouse. We came out of court this afternoon and there was a freaking hurricane blowing outside the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center. I couldn't record this there, so I've relocated to a tavern in Los Feliz, working on an IPA. Gonna give you the news. All right, so we finally got Detective Esther Reyes on the witness stand today, and I know there's been a lot of buildup about her. The victims have talked about that they felt the investigation under her was really being mishandled. But keep in mind, this was the DA calling her to the stand. You're not going to have the DA trash a cop, right? I wasn't sure what to expect. And actually, what happened with Mueller questioning her was just like with Officer Schlegel and Detective Myers. He just went with her over all three cases, Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3, about all the things that corroborated what they're saying on the stand. That in 2017, when she was interviewing them, he went through each case that she told you about the jacuzzi and the drink and how the rape went. Yes. So just all corroboration until finally. Oh, and then the other thing was, like with Schlegel, she had to constantly check her reports. And we'll come back to that because it became an issue later. But she had to, but she would check her reports and say, yes, she told me about, Jane Doe 1 being thrown in the jacuzzi, Jane Doe 3 about waking up in pain, Jane Doe 2, being asked to drink a big glass of red wine. Just all down the line, everything was corroborating basically. And then we got corroboration of something I've been telling you about for 5 years. And that was the LAPD asked these women to make pretext phone calls. What that means is they were told to try to call Masterson or some of the other witnesses in the case and secretly tape them in order to get them to talk about what happened. And again, this was the LAPD asking these women to do this. And first of all, that kind of goes against, Cohen keeps asking, didn't you tell them not to talk to witnesses? Didn't you tell them not to talk to witnesses? And Mueller was saying, yeah, but you were asking them to call witnesses, right? And record them. So that was fun. But here's the thing that's important, is that she described the process and that the technical division at the department had to set up these phone lines, these phone numbers that these women could use so that they would be using their own devices, but to the person they were calling, it would appear to be this sort of random phone number they wouldn't recognize, so they wouldn't be tipped off. But then Deputy DA Mueller said, yeah, but didn't you give them a phone number that turned out being compromised? And Detective Reyes, who's now Detective Mayape, by the way, she's got a new married name. She said that, yeah, one of the numbers happened to be a phone that had already been burned in a sting operation. How did you find out about that? Jane Doe 1 figured it out. See, this is something I've been trying to convey for 5 years now. What these women have been up against and how often they've had to rely on their own initiative, their own work to keep this thing on track. The LAPD gave them a phone number that was compromised. All you had to do was enter it in Google and bam, it came up. Cop phone, don't talk to them. And who figured that out? Jane Doe 1, not the LAPD. Sorry, I get a little excited about this because I know what these women have been through. And that was great to see this LAPD detective confirm that. She had no excuse for it. She said it was just a bizarre mistake, whatever. But, it's confirmation that these women were really concerned about how the LAPD was handling things. So then it was time for cross-examination. And this is when the reports thing came up. Because Cohen was saying, hey, if the DA usually, I'm sure you've testified hundreds of times, the DA has you come into court. Don't they usually give you these reports ahead of time so that they're fresh in your mind before you testify? And she said most of the time. I thought that was very good. She wasn't giving Cohen everything. Most of the time. But you weren't given the reports ahead of time this time, were you? No. So Cohen tried to make an issue out of that. But again, this was one of those things where I felt like it kind of felt like inside baseball in the legal community, and I wasn't sure how much that was going to translate to the jury. I may be wrong, but it just felt, I don't know, like a minor point. He wasn't able to cross-examine her much. I mean, he did go through the things that these women told her that are different than, in their stories. No gun, for example. Or she had, God, I don't want to get this wrong. Jane Doe 1 had told Reyes about the gun. But there were other things that he went over. You can go through my notes about things that she said yes to as far as things that were different. But the cross-examination ended early because she had to leave. It was weird, but she had some other things she had to go to. So she's going to come back some other day. Yeah, we have that to look forward to. It really wasn't that thrilling, the cross-examination. So then we got a couple of corroborating witnesses for Jane Doe 2. The first of whom was Jordan Ladd, actress, daughter of Cheryl Ladd. And she came on to talk about a conversation she had had with Jane Doe 2. Remember, Jane Doe 2 is the one who knew Danny socially. They went to this bar called The Well. He demanded her phone number. He then texted her, "You're coming over, bring a bathing suit." She said, "No, I'll come over, but I'm not bringing a bathing suit." Got to the house, gave her a glass of wine, made her suspiciously intoxicated. Ended up, she claimed raping her in his bedroom, really violently, as a jackhammer and all this. Just awful. That was yesterday's testimony. Jordan Ladd testified that, like, the next day, and at the time, she and Jane Doe 2 were best friends. They're both actresses, both in Hollywood. Jordan Ladd had taken a couple courses, but she said she wasn't a Scientologist. She wasn't part of the Scientology crowd. The next day, Jane Doe 2 had told her about this. And, with the details. I mean, many of the details were there. Not everything. It was a short conversation. But she said Jane Doe 2 was really extremely upset. Now, what I found most interesting about her testimony today was she, described that they were absolute best friends in 2003. But then they weren't friends for years. They had some kind of a falling out. They weren't friends at all in 2017 when the news broke that Danny was under investigation. And Jordan said she saw those headlines and she wanted to contact the LAPD and say, "I know something. She told me back in 2003. I thought, you know what, that really speaks to her integrity and credibility, that even though she was no longer a good friend at all with Jane Doe 2, she felt she needed to talk to law enforcement about this. Then Cohen did his best to make, of course, what he always does, and I don't blame him. I mean, he's doing his job as a defense attorney. What he needs to do then is try to make it sound like there's something unseemly about the way it happened. That did Jane Doe 2 talk to you before you talked to the detective? He's always raising the issue of that timing, and of course that's what he needs to do. That's what he needs to do. But I thought she came through that pretty well. I mean, she seemed very credible that this conversation happened in 2003, and 14 years later, even though they weren't friends anymore, she wanted the LAPD to know about it. So I thought that was pretty strong. She was then followed by Jane Doe 2's mother. And she was older, and she's been through some ill health, but she looked, okay today. But she definitely was, elderly and not, a slight woman and a little frail maybe. Did her best. She was obviously very nervous. So was Jordan Ladd. And she struggled. She struggled to remember everything that was said 19 years ago in a 2003 conversation. She had apparently been told something by her daughter just a day after she told Jordan Ladd. And, Cohen, of course, on cross-examination did his best to kind of highlight that she couldn't remember every detail, that she struggled to remember some things. She couldn't even remember some things she told Detective Vargas just 5 years ago. But what I really was impressed by her was that she said, look, things are vague for me. I have heard things since then, and I can't remember everything from the 2003 conversation, but I remember 3 or 4 things very clearly. And I thought, you know what? That's how memory works, right? You know, think about it in your own life. Think of a conversation you had 19 years ago. You won't remember the details, but there's going to be some nugget that you swear was part of that conversation. What did she say was vivid in her memory about that conversation? That Danny was coming at her from behind like a jackhammer, relentlessly, and that it was painful? That she told him to stop, and he wouldn't stop? And that it was so awful she threw up in her mouth. These are the same details Jordan Ladd remembered. And, you know, that idea of that she told him again and again, stop, 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 and he wouldn't. That's the key. That's what makes it a rape. So, I thought she did well trying to convey that she admitted she couldn't remember everything from a conversation that long ago, but those details stood out for her all these years later. Now, I want to say something about Cohen's cross-examination because I've seen some comments at the website about how he maybe is coming across as, you know, inappropriate or something. I disagree. I think that his job as a defense attorney is to ask tough questions. He has done so politely. He has done so pointedly. But I think in general his behavior has been fine. I think it's been a little ineffective. I think he's focused on very minor details. And somebody will tell me he's setting things up for later. I understand that. But I do not have a problem with his style and the way he's talked to people until he was talking to Jane Doe 2's mother today. This was the first time in the trial I have felt he came across like he was bullying a little old lady. It got a little bad. I was wincing. And I thought, this can't be coming across good to the jury. I felt like he was trying too hard to push her that she couldn't remember things. And in particular, he was going after the word rape. Your daughter didn't say rape. No, she didn't. And she only started using the rape word recently. Yes, she did. But, you know, he just came across as, it was unkind. It was cruel. And again, I really don't think he's been like that throughout this trial. I think this was the first time. And then on redirect, she got to explain why about the word rape, and this was probably, for me, the most, the thing that came through the most today as something I could relate to, somebody explaining themselves, where, you know, the defense has tried to be very narrow. Did you say this? Did you say that? Finally, Ariel Anson asked Jane Doe 2's mother, well, what did you mean about the word rape, not using the word rape? And she explained, in 2003, I still had the idea that a rape was something that involved some man holding a gun to your head or a knife to your throat. I didn't realize it was just a thing about consent. I've learned that since then. She said that and was just like, wow. That just seems so credible and clear. So I give her credit because she was having a hard time on the stand. It's not easy, I think, being older and it's your daughter, and I give her credit for kind of standing up for herself at that moment. So that was the big moment of the day. We'll be back in court tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be a full day. I think we're going to hear from a couple more, a DA investigator and possibly an expert tomorrow. So, sorry about the noise. We're live, people. We're outside a bar. But it seems like every day, I thought, you know, there weren't big names today, but it was still very interesting. As far as what we've got left, after tomorrow, I think the prosecution's basically only left with 2.5 days. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Are they going to get Lisa Marie Presley and Marty Singer in there? I don't know. I hope they do. Those are pretty interesting names. Well, we'll see. Thanks for hanging out with me. I love the comments I'm getting. You guys appreciate the transcripts. I'm typing as fast as I can. Oh, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you're a day behind the rest of us. Please sign up for the free emails at tonyortega.substack.com. You'll get my reports from the courtroom. They're so complete. They're crazy. I sent out 4 of them today. From a tavern in Los Feliz, this is your proprietor signing off.